And it's when I kind of give my presentations to the communities, I talk about, the funeral home is a continuum of care. Whether mom was in
Mhm,
the hospital
mhm,
or dad was in the
mhm,
hospital or on hospice, we are just the next step of the continuing his care.
mhm.
And then that also includes into their care after the fact, including, estates, wills, settlements,
Yeah.
things like that.
We all are gonna die. 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 Why don't we help each other prepare for it? Without death, there could not be life. I'm talking about end of life conversations, conversations about the end of life. Death and dying, grief and loss, conversations about the end of life.
Welcome, everybody. On today's episode, we are joined by Jamie Dravecky. Her journey in funeral services began when she was 19 years old. She's a graduate of the Worsham College of Mortuary Science and holds a bachelor's degree in business management. She's a senior account executive for Homesteaders. Homesteaders is an organization providing products and services to promote and support the funding of advanced funeral planning and end-of-life expenses. So it's important. We were just talking about this.
Mhm.
And it began all the way back in 1906 in Des Moines, Iowa. I want to hear more about that. So before joining Homesteaders, Jamie held almost every role there is in funeral services.
Wow. When Jamie decided to step away from direct funeral services, she joined Homesteaders. She understands what it's like to wake up early in the morning, take the calls, and support the families going through the most difficult times with compassion. She loves working with funeral homes that are looking to try something different. She enjoys helping funeral home owners find new ways to reach communities, whether through events or out of the box ideas, which I'm very curious about that. Pop-up funeral service.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for being with us, Jamie. I'm so delighted and excited to hear more about you.
Well, thank you. I'm very excited to be here and have this important conversation with you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm so glad you could do it. Yeah, we always like to start with kind of getting a feel for our dear interviewees, our hosts, our guests, and asking you when you first became aware of death.
Yeah, that I really thought about that question. So my first experience with death was when I was about 15 or 16 years old. And my grandfather, who I just absolutely loved, died very suddenly and very quickly. Um, and that was really my first experience with any type of death at all.
Hmm.
It was a massive loss and not just my family, but our community as well. He was very beloved and helped build this small town that I lived in. And and so the visitation wound up being 2 days long because the line was about a 4-hour wait.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
Wow.
amazing.
He was a great man. So it was a very, very hard loss for not just my family, but the entire community. So
Hmm.
Mm.
Wow.
It's amazing. I think that oftentimes I worry, like, will anybody show up to my memorial? And then I hear this, I'm like, oh, 4 hours of waiting will not be part of my repertoire.
mine
You
either.
never know.
Mine either.
I mean, I guess, but I'm like, wow,
That's amazing.
that
Yeah.
is amazing.
Is that in Iowa where you live now, or where that was happening?
No, that was in Indiana.
Okay.
I grew up in Indiana, very rural area of Indiana, and then I moved to Illinois to go to Worsham, and then wound up staying in Illinois.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Excellent.
Yeah. So that was your first impactful meeting with death. So throughout the course of your life, how has death impacted your story? Like where has it been?
Yeah, it's kind of funny the path I took. I always like to ask other funeral professionals, like, how did you get here?
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's not just most people don't wake up and say, "Hey, I want to be a funeral director." I think my husband was like one of the oddballs who actually knew from a very young age that's what he wanted to do.
So cool.
But that was not me. Matter of fact, when I was in elementary school, one of the one of the field trips that you took every year was to the local funeral home to have a tour and kind of start your first experience, so to speak, with death. I faked that I was sick. I wanted no part of that. I thought, nope, no, thank you.
Not going there.
Yeah, no, not at all. So fast forward to my grandfather passing away. I wound up babysitting the local funeral home owners' children. I started learning a little bit more about death and funeral service that way. And it takes kind of a weird turn here. So my grandmother actually had prearranged her funeral, and I had helped answer some questions for her, some things she wanted to do that were a little outside the box thinking. But if you knew my grandmother, that it tracks.
They made sense.
Yeah, it made perfect sense. She wanted a big party versus something sad and depressing, so to speak. So anyway, she had actually prearranged her funeral, and the funeral director that I had watched his children, he actually took the pre-need funds and did not put them where they were supposed to go.
Oh, no.
And so I thought, there's got to be better people out here that
Yeah.
are good, kind people. And so that kind of led me on the path of exploring death a little bit more, even so. Then I went to school, and I thought I wanted to be a forensic pathologist. That just sounded like such a cool profession. I love the science and the whys and the data and all of that goes along with forensic pathology. And so our forensic professor said, you really should go volunteer at a funeral home to make sure that you can handle being around someone who's deceased. And I thought, well, if I'm going to fight for medical school and have 20 years of education under my belt, I better make sure I can handle that part of things.
Yeah.
So I got connected to a funeral home in the town over, and I said, hey, can I just come hang out for like a couple weeks? I just want to make sure I can handle all this. And I fell in love with it. And I realized I don't need to go to school for 20 years. I can do this, but on a different scale and impact more families.
Wow.
And so that's how I wound up going to Worsham and landing where I landed. Yeah.
That's a beautiful story. I love
Yeah,
it.
that's wonderful. I love that. It's so great. So
It's definitely got some twists and turns.
yeah, right, exactly. Come on,
What I do like about those twists and turns is that it really kind of fostered you actually knowing that this is a choice that you made.
Yeah.
Rather than, like, oh, maybe. But no, it's like, here you are. You're just every step of the way, it's almost like your calling, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Yes.
So tell us more about what you're doing now with the Homesteaders and about Homesteaders in general, and kind of what your current role is there. And really, I just, in general, finding out that it started in 1906 was the first thing I went, what? That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy to think that you work for a company that's over 100 years old, right? Especially when it comes to funeral service.
Yeah, right.
And not being a funeral home. So, so I'm an senior account executive with Homesteaders Life Company. And basically what my job is I go out and speak to funeral homes and just kind of help them develop a really good business plan to be able to educate the community on the importance of pre-planning. I am a huge advocate for pre-planning. Before I took this role, ever since my experience with my grandmother is really kind of what sparked my intrigue in realizing how important it was, because she even had little pieces of things hidden from us to make sure that it was really all about her. And and I loved that. So I've been a big advocate of pre-planning for a long time. And I work for one of the best companies to do that with. Like you said, they've been in business forever, since 1906. I think it was a group of farmers that got together in Iowa that started this, which is just a little bit mind-blowing. But
that's great.
Pre-planning kind of took off in the 80s and 90s, and now it's a much bigger factor in most businesses today. But it's great to be able to help educate communities. That's really how I look at things, is people don't know what they don't know, and they don't know about pre-planning or funeral planning in general until they experience a loss. And by then it's too late, because then they don't really have a chance to focus on the grief. They have to think about all the steps that go along with planning the funeral.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that's where I really feel lucky to be in a position to help educate people.
Right. I was going to say so I'm really curious, two things. This is a twofold question. What happened to your grandmother's funeral then? Because the person never did what they were supposed to do with the money. So what happened?
Yeah, so the funeral director went to jail for a while. There was a whole big lawsuit, which I'll never forget. But yeah, the whole
Mm-hmm.
court proceeding was just a little bit crazy. But a few of the insurance companies that had policies that weren't real, but he had written as they were real,
Hmm.
honored those dollar amounts
Mm-hmm.
and helped the families out that way. So in her case, she actually had a homesteader's life policy. They paid the claim to, I think it was our family or the funeral home that she had used at that time, and then they had gone after him separately in a separate lawsuit that he had to pay that stuff back, was my
Okay.
understanding.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and the reason I bring this up is last year when we were at a funeral conference, and I remember there was a woman who talked about how she mistrusts like subscription plans, especially for our POC communities where they're like targeting poor people, and then they really don't actually show up. So, tell me more about how we can help, like prepare people. How can they know the right information so they don't get taken advantage of?
I love that question so much. So in Illinois, because I totally agree with you, especially when it comes to people of color, there's mistrust and it's understood. And so some different communities are targeted a little bit harder than others, which just, breaks my heart. But
Yes.
there are ways to kind of help combat that. One, go into a funeral home and ask questions. Um, One of the most important things I think is you have to feel comfortable with the people that you're meeting with. And if
Mhm,
you're not, that is not your funeral home, period.
mhm,
Hmm. Hmm.
mhm.
Two, ask them, what are the legal requirements for the state as far as pre-planning goes?
Huh,
So in the state of Illinois, we actually have a consumer protection fund. So if God forbid somebody did do what happened to my grandmother, we could have actually filed a claim with the state to
mhm,
still get that money back.
Wow.
mhm,
I
mhm,
know not every state has that, but I would ask that question if I was a family. I would say, hey, what are the legal requirements? What
mhm,
happens if I move? What happens if I die
mhm,
and my family doesn't realize I have this policy?
mhm,
Ask
mhm.
them those questions. Make sure
Beautiful.
that they're working with a reputable company.
Mhm,
There are a lot of really good companies that handle prearranged funerals.
mhm,
But as always, there's some bad eggs out there. So just making sure, find out who they're using, do your homework on that company, find out how long have they been in business, what
mhm,
what are their methods, ask the questions about the state requirements.
mhm.
Like I said, in Illinois, there's a lot that go along with, they have to report financials and everything that goes along with pre-need to make sure that the families are protected. That's really, really important.
It
Yeah.
is, and it happens to so many people in so many different arenas, right? Like, we could pre-plan
Mhm.
as like, with good faith, and you brought one up, like, the family doesn't actually know that there's something
Yeah.
there available. That's a big risk, right?
Yeah.
Or, and, Wakil and I were just talking about, hospice care and planning for that and asking questions. And when you're in that moment of grief, and people seem to kind of like, push you aside, be like, yeah, I don't know, I don't know. You really don't have the energy to like actually step away from the process of grieving your loved one and go out and do the yucky labor of finding the money and finding the people who need to help you, right? So
Yeah.
it's tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, and it breaks my heart every time I go online and I see 100 GoFundMe's for funeral
Mhm.
Right.
services. It's like, man, they're so focused on the money aspect of it that if I always tell people, and my own family included, so I'm not I'm not saying anything, I'm not practicing anything, I'm not preaching here, preaching anything, I'm not practicing, I should say. But at least get your wishes down so that your
Yes.
family can focus on at least a fraction of what
Right.
it's one less thing they have to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Um, and I always tell the story when I give presentations that one of the very last families I met with before I left kind of the day to day of funeral service was a woman. She's about my age. And so she was, I'd say, late 30s, and her mom had died from breast cancer.
Hmm.
And we had done the funeral, done the arrangements, done everything, obviously didn't have a pre plan. And she came back about a month later. And I always follow up with families to make sure they're doing okay, just checking in,
Mhm.
making, doing that aftercare, a little bit of
Mhm.
aftercare, um, to make sure they don't need anything, things like that.
Mhm.
And she came into the funeral home and we sat down and I could tell she was off immediately. I
Mhm.
knew my gut was just screaming that something here is not okay.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And so we sat down and we had a conversation, and she finally broke down and told me that she was really upset about the casket she picked out for her mom,
Mm.
to the point that she wanted to disinter her mom. And in case your listeners don't know what that means actually digging mom up out of the ground and
Mhm.
taking her out of that casket and putting her in a different casket.
Wow.
Wow.
That can be very traumatic,
Yeah.
to say the
Mhm.
least.
Mhm.
So we had a really good conversation about it, and she left feeling much better. But that's the kind of thing people don't think about when it comes
Yes.
to
Mhm.
their passing. It's like it's so much more than just the financial aspect of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. All those details. That's so important.
Yeah.
When you're helping people with planning for the funeral, how big of a spectrum is there? Is there also, like you said, advanced care directives? Do you help people with that, or with um, directing them to lawyers for wills and trusts and all the other pieces that go along with, like you said, the things you can do to be kind to your beloveds, to have as much in place as possible. Do you work with those things as well?
Yeah, I like that question. That's a great question. Yes. So the answer is yes. Now, not every funeral home does, but I
Yeah.
believed in
Yeah.
in kind of full service care, so to speak. So, forming those relationships with hospice and forming those with one of the most fascinating things I think right now are death doulas.
Yeah.
I am trying to learn as much as I can about death doulas because I find it so fascinating. Um, you know, Finding local attorneys that you can refer families to that you trust, that um, making it more full compassing versus just, hi, come in for the funeral. Okay, bye.
Yeah.
It's so much more than that. And when I kind of give my presentations to the communities, I talk about, the funeral home is a continuum of care. Whether
Yep.
mom was in the hospital or dad was in the hospital or in hospice, we are just the next step of the continuing his care. And then that also includes into their care after the fact, including, estates, wills, settlements,
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That really reminds me of the woman we interviewed from New Orleans who talked about how there's like the whole advanced care directive planning and the executor of that person before they die. But
Mhm.
she's like, then there really needs to be another person who can carry that, the descendant, or I guess the decedent, through the funeral. And I think at a really good funeral home, that person would be someone like you who'd say, like, okay, now I'm going to, take this body and we're going to like take it through the next step. So yeah, so important. And
Yeah.
we don't
Yeah.
think about those things, right?
Yeah.
No,
Well,
right, right.
and we have several episodes with death doulas, so check
Oh
them
yeah.
out. And audience, check them out. You want to know more about death doulas? We've got a lot of them.
I have that bookmarked. And it's one of the topics we've been talking about a little bit more in the Death Care Collective too,
Hmm.
is that.
Yeah. Tell us about that, about the Death Care Collective.
Yeah, I realized I probably should have mentioned this a little earlier.
Well, and
Uh,
that's how I found you, because you had
Yeah,
a book
yes.
club. I
yeah.
was like, I want to be
Yes.
part of this book club.
Yes. So the Death Care Collective got started during COVID.
Hmm.
We realized, with COVID and everything shutting down, we weren't having our conventions. We weren't having, places that we normally kind of get together and meet. And my friend Erin reached out to me and she said, hey, I just had virtual coffee with this gal named Olga and you have to meet her. Your energies are like perfect
Love
for
it.
each other. And Lord, was she right. So we had a virtual coffee together, got to know each other, and we just said, okay, if we're feeling this way, there's got to be other people who are feeling this way too.
Yeah.
And so we put a couple things out, talk about vulnerability here. We said, hey, does anybody else want to hang out online with us? Um, and that kind of led into our book club. And then from there, we were just having these book clubs like once a month because it was COVID and there's nothing else to do but, read and watch TV, I felt like. But um, so fast forward to January of that next year, some people got together at one, I believe it was at ICCFA at Dead Talks. And they said, hey, let's all grab breakfast since we're finally in face to face and can meet some of these people in person. And that led to the 9 of us launching the Death Care Collective.
That is
And
so amazing. Oh,
it really
love it.
is. And when I went to Worsham, my class was the first class that was 50-50 women, men.
Mhm.
And so to see that advance to now, I think the national average was 72% women graduating
Yeah.
mortuary schools.
Yeah.
And there's just not a lot of support for women in this profession. Now, I will say there's been a lot of groups that have popped up, which is awesome, because I feel like people are finally realizing there's a need to help nurture women into either ownership or mentorship, or just being there to support each other in different avenues. So
Great.
it's been a beautiful thing to watch. We've got virtual events, usually once a quarter. We have our book clubs, which we just had the author on, which was so cool.
I got to get in on this.
Yeah. It's definitely worth checking out. We have a lot of men that support us too, which I think is fantastic. And we've even had men reach out to say, "Hey, how do we help? We were trying to help our coworker. We don't know what to do. Can you help us?" And so,
Sweet.
there's been times where we've even had some of that conversation as well, just to make sure that women are seen and heard and felt in funeral service, because we're
That's
important.
so important. Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that last part, because I was thinking, okay, how do I help? How
Yeah.
do I use my place of privilege, Um,
Yeah.
it
Well,
also occurred to me that something else Ana Luis and I were just talking about might be something that the Death Collective could talk about, was the support for people who don't have means, um, for their end of life costs and end of life stuff, or don't have people they can count on for their agency or for their healthcare agent or their fiduciary agent. We've been talking about that a while, because both of us teach classes, and we almost every class somebody says, "I don't have anybody can do that for me, and I don't have any money to hire anybody to do that for me." And I think it'd be a
Yeah.
wonderful thing to create some kind of way of supporting people like that. So
Yeah,
anyway,
definitely.
cool. Well, that's
yeah.
great. Thanks for sharing that.
I was also going to say, I really appreciate the Death Care Collective to support women
Hmm.
in this funeral industry. Just like the women we met through the death doulas in California, who meet weekly, I think, or monthly, to like
Yeah.
support each other through, this is what we do. Sometimes it's heavier than other times, and at least I bear witness to your services, because
Hmm.
it is not always an easy lift, right? And we're here to
Sure.
support you. So I really appreciate that. That's kind of this very organic formation of support for women, which I love, but
Yeah.
that men can also form their own places, and then maybe there's a third where like it's like we are all equals in this place, and can work. But I do hear that happening in the death care industry, the death, all of us death focused folks are talking to each other and talking about these things that are really important that most other people do not want to come and talk to us about.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. That is exactly it.
They're like, ooh, ooh, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. The stigmas around just the word of death, it just blows my mind.
Yes, I
Yeah.
know. I
Yeah.
know.
But
Yeah.
I
Because
think it's I think
we kind of self-select here for all the people that are willing to talk about it. So
Mhm.
yes, right, right. And I think one of the most beautiful things about the Death Care Collective is I've watched it grow into, I mean, I think we have over 3,000 followers now on LinkedIn, which is
wow.
just
Mhm.
blows my mind in an awesome way. It's
Hmm.
been very humbling in all the right ways.
Hmm.
But seeing all the different people in the different community inside of
Mhm.
it. So
Mhm.
knowing that we have, in certain cultures and ethnicities and backgrounds, people, it's so taboo to talk about death. And if
Yeah.
you talk about it, it's going to happen. So to
Hmm.
Right.
see some of those people from those communities be a part
Mhm.
of the Death Care Collective, it just makes me excited and kind of
Mhm.
energizes me, because they're having conversations in their community, which I
Mhm.
think are just could be
Yes.
huge for
Yeah.
those communities.
Invaluable, right?
Yeah,
That's so
absolutely.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I
Wonderful.
also think it's a practice too. I mean, I've been death mongering for like 13 years now. And, my kids are like, oh my God, mom, like we'll never get invited to a party because of you, because you just are so casual about talking about death and dying.
Hmm.
And what I realize now is like, I'm so comfortable in this. And, my kids' swim meet dinner last spring, I didn't have anybody to talk to. And it was just this older gentleman and myself sitting there. And we talked about the podcast. And then he's like, I'm very nervous talking about this with anybody, but I want to talk about it, but I'm afraid. And
Hmm.
I was like, what? Just practice with me. What would you say? And I was like, it's just about like really letting go of that structure that makes you feel like it's going to make you feel embarrassed or shamed or scared or put somebody off. So I love that we practice it
Yeah.
constantly.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And I kind of joke that we get invited to all the parties because I'm the favorite party trick, me or my husband, because everybody has like the most random question to ask about like whatever part of funeral service. And I'm like,
Yeah.
so I kind of joke that we're the party trick. But you just said something that actually triggered a thought in my brain too. Um, one of the things that people don't think about when it comes to prearranging that I always try to point out is that you are going to face your own mortality in
Yes.
this.
Yes.
And it's uncomfortable.
For
It is
sure.
so uncomfortable. And if you go home and tell your kids, hey, I just made these prearrangements yesterday, they're going to say, oh my gosh, you're sick and dying. No, that's not what that means. So I like to, do like to tell people that like, hey, be prepared. These are the two things you might have happen to you that you're probably not going to expect.
Yeah, very true.
That is so true.
Yeah, well said. That's important. Yeah, I mean, we all, because we are the death positive people in our communities, we tend to have those conversations, and
All the
that's
time, ad
yeah.
nauseum.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Which is great. I mean, it's good that there's somebody they can talk to about it, and that we can, that's really good advice to recognize that, yeah, there are going to be people who are uncomfortable with this. So,
Yes, absolutely. And it's funny too, because you could be sitting on a plane and talk to someone, but I'd rather them ask me than go to Google and get wrong information, because
Right.
there is a lot of that out there where somebody might hear something and think that that's the truth everywhere. It's like, well, no.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
That's true there, but not here, or it could be regional or cultural as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, there's so much work to do. I sitting here thinking about this. I'm like, I want to still be talking about this to strangers, right? Because it does open up conversations, and hopefully it'll make somebody feel more at ease to talk about it with loved
Yeah.
ones,
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Where are we at? What are your
Having
biggest
fun.
challenges in this work?
Oh gosh. It's funny. You'd think that the biggest challenge would be getting people to understand pre-need, and that's definitely one of them. But I'm always surprised at how many funeral homes are also just, how do I say this the right way? They It's not that they're not open to pre-need, but they don't see it as a value add. And that kind of breaks my soul a little bit. Because I do think it's so important to educate.
Yeah.
Because families typically only do this once or twice in their entire life.
Right.
So we have the opportunity to make or break that experience. And for me, that's my biggest challenge probably is getting them to realize like, hey, you've only got once or twice to make this right. And if you get it wrong the first time, they're not coming back. So
Wow.
how do we fix that? How do we make it so families actually want to walk through your door, want to pick up the phone and call you to ask you the questions? How can you be the resource to that? So I think that's a big challenge is getting people to talk about death, one, and two, understand the importance of not just pre-planning, but having those educational conversations.
For the funeral homes specifically, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah.
And we had Seth, who actually he lost a loved one and realized how wrong it felt that he went out and became a funeral director, because he's like, I can do better than this.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. Yeah.
It is funny how many people go into funeral service for that exact reason.
Interesting.
That exact reason is they've had a bad experience and they say, nope.
That
Yeah.
didn't work. Yeah.
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 Well, does anything frighten you about the end of life?
Not really. I think it's just the unknown of what happens next, right? Like once we
Yeah.
die, then what? But
Yeah.
but no, I don't think so. I know exactly what I want in my funeral plan and my funeral service. It's going to be a big old party. So not much frightens me other than just the unknown of what that looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we don't get to know that, I guess. So,
Right.
although we've had several guests on our podcast, at least a few guests on our podcast now that have said they're talking to people who have gone over, and so we never know. Maybe they're telling the truth. Who knows? But it doesn't sound like a bad gig for the people that have talked. It sounds like they're having a good time.
Well, that gives me hope. That gives me hope.
Right, exactly.
I love it.
Yeah. Okay.
So how do you keep yourself resourced when you're going through either like a tough narrative of somebody's end of life passing, what do you do to make sure that you can keep doing it the next day for another family?
Yeah.
Oh, I love this question. I didn't do enough for myself when I was in the day-to-day. That I know. Um, and it was also hard because I'm still married to a funeral director. So we kind of got on opposite schedules for a bit and couldn't quite find, the groove of how things should go, which also led me stepping away from the day-to-day. So I think I wish I would have found more ways to help myself have better balance.
Hmm.
Um, Now I'm finding that, a little bit better, but, reading different books that can help me navigate different situations, listening to podcasts. I'm always trying to read and better myself in some way so that I can help more families. Um, Going for the walks outside, getting that fresh air, getting that sunshine when I can, that's a big one. Just probably I would say mostly as much self-care as I can navigate. Ironically enough, my biggest one I realized, is baking. So I love to bake.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Bakers are
made
the best people.
yeah, thank you for that. I think so. Yeah, I made some cinnamon rolls and muffins yesterday to try to
Mm,
find my groove back.
all right,
Yeah.
we'll be right over.
Yeah.
That's great. I
That's
love
so
that.
beautiful because it's also you being in service. I mean, I one of my teachers always said when you get really in a dark spot, you need to figure out how you can be of service to others. And,
Yeah,
creating food stuff to feed other people is in
Yeah.
service to
yeah,
Yeah.
allowing the nutritional goodness to come back in for you too.
yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. It was definitely hard when, like I said, when I was in the day-to-day of the funeral home. I wish
Sure.
I could have found more ways to make that balance work better. I'm
Mhm.
proud that I found it now, but I wish I could have had that then. So if anybody is in that spot, you need to figure it out and really kind of make a pros and cons list of what brings you joy and what doesn't,
Yeah,
and focus
exactly.
on those things that bring you that joy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Many people have said getting in the woods is, or into nature. Yeah,
Yep.
so that's a recommendation really for the audience. Anybody who's doing this work,
Yeah.
it's
Or
make it a
Yeah.
priority.
caregiving,
Yeah, any kind
anything.
of
Yeah.
make it a priority
Yeah.
to give yourself a
Which
break and get outside or whatever works for you. Yeah,
Bake.
Yeah,
take
which
a
is
nap.
funny to me because yeah, right, well, that was my typical thing is I would like, "Okay, let's just curl up in a ball and sleep and watch a movie or something," and my husband's like, "You haven't seen the sun in 4 days. Can you please go outside?" And like, "Okay." So, like, he was the one pushing me to get outside, go for walks and things like that, and I'm like, "I don't wanna do any of that. That doesn't sound enjoyable right now," but I realized really quickly that he was correct, that did feel really great by the time we were about half a mile in.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Well, it's and you will all of us will suffer through times when we can't even take care of ourselves. And that's a very
yeah,
honest and real thing. And it'll take a little bit of maneuvering to figure out what can kind of get us back small steps towards better, health. But it is feeding the mind, body, and soul, right? Like,
yeah,
reading a book, going outside for a walk, sitting in nature, making some cinnamon rolls, like
yeah,
self-care
yeah.
right there.
yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and I love that, as your husband was helping, we can all be advocates for each other. We can
Yes.
all
Yeah.
help each other out.
Yes.
Say, by the way, you haven't seen the sun in 4 days. You want to
Yes.
go for a walk?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
Yeah,
grateful for him. He's a good rock to have, that's for sure.
right.
That's great.
Well, is there anything we haven't asked that you would wish we would have asked you?
Um, I can't think of anything.
Okay, that's good. We did
Yeah,
our job.
yeah. If anybody's interested in checking out the Death Care Collective, we have a public Facebook, a public Instagram, and a public LinkedIn page, but we also have a private Facebook group.
Mm,
I just ask that you fill out the questions because I am the one that monitors that.
okay.
But
Right.
it's where some really good conversations happen. That's the area where we only allow women and non-binary folks in, to really have those conversations that are personal, private, that they may not want shared with outside of our group. And we kind of joke that the Vegas rules apply there. So
Yeah.
we also have a website which we need to update because some people have changed jobs since
Mhm.
since we've launched. But yeah, so feel free to check any of that stuff out because
Oh,
we're
Yeah.
I'm really
Yeah.
proud of it.
I'm so
Yeah.
And
excited.
how can men support you? Tell me more about that real quick.
Oh, I love that question. So we have a lot of men that ask how can we help, and I think the biggest way that men can support women in funeral service is when we're not being heard, lift our voices.
Yeah.
Um, allow our message to come through, and if you hear us say it, but you say that we said it.
Uh-huh.
Because I think sometimes that can make a huge difference of actually being heard of, okay, well, this is what I just heard. Did you hear Jamie say XYZ? That's
That's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
great.
So I think that's an easy way for men to help us
Yes.
navigate some of those situations for sure.
Yep.
That's
Mhm.
great. I love that. Definitely
Mhm.
on my list. And I'm glad that we could share that with our audience. And hopefully all the men out
Yeah.
there will remember this because it's so important. Such
Yeah,
an
and
important
you
thing.
know what? I feel like that's such a simple way to help anybody who's
Yeah.
marginalized,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Lift
Like
their
it could
Yes.
voice.
be a POC and a disabled, or LGBTQI and a white person. Like it doesn't matter. But if we just,
Yeah.
the person who's trying to say something that would really help the rest of the community, just continue to like lift up those voices
Yeah,
as we move
absolutely.
Yes.
along.
Yeah. Good
Yes.
lessons. Good
Agreed.
lessons for
The
all of us.
caregiver who is stuck and sad in a caregiving situation, let's get them also their
Yeah, that's
voices
right.
heard so that they can find more help.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I
Yes.
love that.
Absolutely.
Well, you sent us a poem, I think. Let me see if I can
A
find it.
quote.
A
A
quote. Yeah.
quote, my
Do you
favorite
wanna
quote.
Yeah,
you
I
wanna
love it. I've been staring at it. I'm like, oh,
That's a beautiful quote. Do you
It,
I've
wanna share that with us?
I let me pull it up just to make sure that I say it correctly because I tend to get it backwards. I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that it won't work. That's by Thomas Edison. And I think that is one of the best quotes because
hmm
it gives power to whatever it is you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And it gives
hmm
positivity to whatever you're trying to do. You haven't failed. You just haven't found the right way to make it work.
Yeah.
And I love
10,000
that.
times maybe. Yeah,
I
there's a
love
great
that
Rumi
quote.
quote. There's a
yeah,
great Rumi quote, even though you've broken your vows 1,000 times. Come again. Yeah.
this is
Beautiful.
it is
Beautiful. Thank
beautiful.
you.
Thank you
Thanks for
so
sharing that.
much. That's gonna help me in my way
My
today.
pleasure.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you for joining us today. Please stick around after the credits for our afterthoughts, and it helps our numbers if you stay until the end. We want to thank my children, Nate, Vivian, Nina, and her fiance Asher, for the excellent opening song, and a special thanks to our awesome editor, Sam Zemke, who is also a guest on our podcast. You can listen to him on Season 4, Episode 5. Also, thank you to Charles Heaston, the composer of the original music you are listening to now.
And of course, thanks to you, our audience, and all of our amazing guests. Please come back next week for another great episode. Share this with your friends, family, and community. We hope you will subscribe and follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Substack. Each guest's additional information will be found in the podcast notes. And of course, if you have a good end-of-life story to share, please reach out. We are always eager to hear from you.
Again.
Amazing.
Amazing.
What a great organization that's been around since 1906, and wow, just doing that work, supporting people, helping them find what they need and get
That's
their
right.
act together and plan, and
That's right.
so important, and for
It's so
so many years.
That's right. It's like it's a legacy workplace for sure. But I really appreciate that they've been supporting people for a long time. And her story about her grandmother having paid for her funeral, and then discovered that the money had actually been absconded with, but the bank decided to honor it and go after the funeral persons who took her money. But the best laid plans
Yeah,
can sometimes go awry. And, when you're doing this kind of prep work, always go with a legacy
yeah,
organization who has, a long history of supporting people, because
right.
you just never know who you're going to get.
Yeah, exactly, and really look into their reputation. Yeah, there are ways to find that out, and Better
That's right.
Business Bureau, and just anything up, all of the wonderful ways that we Nowadays, Yelp. I don't know if you have Yelp for
Yeah.
funeral services, but maybe
They
so. You know.
they probably do. But,
Yeah.
this is, again, going back to normalizing conversations around
Yeah.
death and dying because, if somebody has had a great experience with a funeral home and you can ask questions, "Hey,
Yeah.
how'd it go when, your auntie died or your grandfather? Like, was it a good thing?" And, the more we talk about it, the less, um, possibilities of really wrongdoing can
Yeah.
happen
Yeah.
because we'll know.
Yeah. Yeah. The community supports each other. That's
That's
really
right.
what I loved about that whole thing. So
That's right.
wonderful. Well,
Yes.
see you next time.
Adios.